Welcome. Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Catskills. Our minister is Reverend Bob Janice Dillon. I am Jenny O'Grady Giddy, a member of the worship committee, and I'm the worship associate for this morning. A big welcome to our Zoom attendees today. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religious faith that carries no creed and welcomes all seekers. We are guided by a set of principles and written sources that encompass the many ways we come to know and understand the world, the universe, and the divine. Our principles are important to us at UU Catskills, and we live our values on a daily basis. We affirm that Black Lives Matter. We are a welcoming congregation for the LGBTQ community. We are a congregational affiliate of the Ulster Immigrant Defence Network, and we are an active voice in the effort to address climate change. Community circles connect members with others that live in their local community. There are 9 circles in different areas who meet monthly in person or online through Zoom. If you would like to get in touch with the circle in your area, please contact the office administrator. The dates to gather, please refer to the summer newsletter for information about events, or look on the website uucatskills.org. These are words about climate change as we put into our service every week. The elders were wise. They know that man's heart away from nature becomes hard. They knew that lack of respect for growing living things soon led to a lack of respect for humans too. Chief Luther Standing Bear from the Lakota Sioux.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change, alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we'll lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change, alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
If you have a chalice, please light it, as I have already lit mine. And now, join me in our chalice lighting words We light this chalice in grateful, loving community. Even in the darkest of times, may its flame light paths to courage, justice, and hope. Please join me in our unison affirmation. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love to all living beings. May we know once again that we are not isolated, but connected in wonder and joy to mystery and miracle in the universe, in this community, and in each other. And these are our opening words by Trevor Noah. People always lecture the poor. Take responsibility for yourself. Make something of yourself. But with what raw materials are the poor to make something of themselves? People love to say, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. What they don't say, and it would really help if you give him a fishing rod. So today's service is a download from the UU Hysterical Society. And they offer this service to various UU congregations around the world. And so I'm just copied this from their website. Their slogan is respecting inherent mirth and dignity. You don't have to be UU to be in this group. We've had people be members for months, thinking it was a joke religion made up for the purposes of the group. It isn't. It's a real religion, but you can engage with it or not as you choose. We welcome anyone who is willing to walk with us as we work to build a world that is more just and more loving for all and wants to laugh on the way. We don't want everyone to join our religion. We think everybody being the same religion would be boring. So if you are here just for the memes and laughing is the only form of worship you need right now, know that God guards the universe. None of the above, dunno, is fine with that, as are we. You will not go to hell, we promise. By the same token, we will occasionally post links to amazing stuff like services or podcasts for those who want to go a little deeper. And if you have a look on Facebook, you will see the UU Hysterical Society and the jokes they share. And it's really always uplifting and hilarious. It's worth looking at. I'm just going to... So this is the story, the Not for Children Only. And this is Liz, who will be telling the story and also giving the sermon. She's with the UU Hysterical Association.
This is a story about saying something when things aren't right. I don't know about your family, but my family has been doing a lot of that lately. Some of you might have experienced going with a parent to a march or to hold signs, or even been part of writing a letter or an email. And I'm sure all of you have had the experience of seeing something not quite right and saying something about it. I want to tell you the story, the true story, of two children who did just that. I don't know their real names, but their nicknames were Bukuru and Toyi. They were 7 and 9 years old, and they lived in a very poor country in Africa called Burundi. And they lived in a small hut of very few rooms with a grass roof in a land that was always warm and green. They spent their days mostly running around outside, playing, taking care of the family's herd of cows. And one morning, a little over 5 years ago, they were out in the fields in the middle of the day, and they saw a group of men arrive in cars. The men had guns, and they also had a man with them who looked like maybe he wasn't choosing to be there. Talking quickly, the men ushered the other man into the hut, and they closed the door. That man was indeed their prisoner. In fact, he was a Unitarian minister by the name of Reverend Fulgence Ndadijimana. We'll call him Fulgence. Fulgence was the minister of the Unitarian church nearby. The Unitarian church had been doing exactly what so many UU churches in North America do. They had seen things going on in their country and they were saying something. They were going to demonstrations, just like so many of us do. Now, in Burundi, the government responds more angrily to demonstrations than they do here, and it became very dangerous to speak up. People were being seriously hurt, so the Unitarian Church did something very brave. They bought some cell phones and some vests that said Human Rights Observer, and they began recording what was going on. It was probably this that caused those men to take Fulgence as prisoner. Now the kids, they didn't know any of that, of course, but they did know something wasn't right. They could feel it. So at lunchtime, they went to the local police station and they explained what they'd seen. You can imagine, 7 and 9 years old, how nervous they must have felt walking into the police station all by themselves. But the policemen were nice. They said they'd go see what was happening, so the boys went back to the field with their cows. But at the end of the day, before going home, they checked one more time, back at the hut to make sure things were okay, and the police hadn't kept their word. They hadn't gone to check on things. So the boys returned to the police station, and they said something again, and they were able to convince a policeman to come. The police arrived just as the men were taking Fulgence outside, saying they were going to kill him, and they stopped that from happening. They took everyone to the station, they sorted things out, and Fulgence tells me that he believes that if it weren't for those boys saying something, he probably would not have lived. It wasn't easy for Fulgence after that day. Soon after, he was arrested, and then he was sent to prison, and again, people helped him. Unitarian Universalists saw what was happening, and they said something. People of all ages, kids too, wrote letters to Fulgence's government to say what was happening was not okay. Fulgence knew about all this. Even when he was in prison and very afraid, he knew there were Unitarian Universalists all over the world working together to save him. At night, when it was dark and he couldn't sleep, he would picture the flaming chalice in his mind, and that helped him hold on to hope. After 9 days, he was released temporarily, but he knew they were coming for him again, so a friend drove him straight to the airport. He didn't pack his toothbrush. He didn't say goodbye to his family. He made it across the border, and eventually he made it to Canada as a refugee. Now he works as a minister in Canada, and he also runs a charity called Flaming Chalice International, which helps the people in the region that he comes from. Now it's Fulgence who is able to see injustice and do something to fix it, with the support of UUs from all over the world. But even today, Fulgence has never forgotten those 2 children, 7 and 9 years old, who saw something that they knew wasn't right and who spoke up.
So if anybody would like to put anything in the chat to share joys and sorrows, that would be great. And we will carry on though with Joan Baez. I love this recording from 1965. And if you remember, last week, Pat Lamana played We Shall Overcome and gave the history of the song. When she was giving the service on Pete Seeger's songs. And Pete had recounted that a Black woman he worked with said, let's change the words from we will overcome to we shall overcome. So we can sing along at home.
Would you sing We Shall Overcome with me, please? We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, Truth will make us free. Truth will make us free. Truth will make us free someday. How deep in my heart I do believe we shall overcome someday. We are not afraid today. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. How deep in my heart I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. How deep in my heart I do believe we shall overcome someday. Thank you.
Ooh, I've had that in my head for the last week or so. It's a pretty good thing to have in our head, particularly at this time. Now we'll have a few minutes of meditative silence. Time to come back, and we'll have the sermon from Liz James. She's the woman who we heard before, and she's at a congregation in Saskatoon in Canada, and she will tell us more about the flaming chalice.
When my friend Celeste was joining our congregation in Saskatoon about 10 years ago, I was one of the committee members charged with orienting him to our congregation. Celeste grew up in Masai Mara in Kenya. He grew up exactly as many generations of Maasai before him did. No English, no reading, no writing, no electricity. unlimited exercise, time with friends, fresh air, sunshine. In early adulthood, he fell in love with a Canadian who was visiting, and they had a family, and that's how he came to be in a church in the snowy depths of Canada, where he and I became friends. I remember at the newcomer member dinner, he was joining our church, and I was showing him the chart of how our church works. It had, the board and the president and the voting and the committee on ministry, all the stuff. And I showed him this very complex chart because I felt it was important that he be well informed about our governance. And he looked carefully at the chart for a long time. He listened to my explanation, and then he shook his head. He said, "Nope." I said, "Really? This is how we make decisions?" And he said, "No. Usually the mothers make the decisions while you are watching the children and talking. I have seen it." And I said, "Yeah, but there's also this." And he looked at it for a little bit longer, and then he said slowly, "This looks like a lot of work." I explained that it is, but it's important that we do it to create community. "You don't have to do this for community," he said. "How you have community is you bring many people together, and then they make community. Many people make community without these," he struggled for the word, "committees." It was like he was trying to explain to me that 2 + 2 = 4 because that's what 4 is. It doesn't need a committee to be 4, it's just 4. When we first arrived in Kenya 3 years ago, the first thing Celeste did was drive us to the plaque at the center of his village, haul us out of the Jeep to stand around it. The plaque marked the death of a white tourist a few years back. We read it. It was in English. It told the story of a man waking up in the early hours of the morning, heading out for a walk, and being mauled by a wild elephant. The plaque, as I read it, was about the danger of African elephants. Celeste saw the cause of death a little differently, and he explained to me, "This man had a Maasai guard, like you have a Maasai guard. This man did not listen to his Maasai guard and went for a short walk by himself, and an elephant killed him. When Mzungu people do not listen to their Maasai guard, they die right away." Mzungu is the word they used for white people, and it really came in handy for me. Every time I couldn't see something like a nest of birds 3 feet away from my face that the guide was pointing to, I'd point to my eyes and I would go, "Mzungu." And every time I did something silly, I'd use the word Mzungu, and they'd all shrug like, "What are you going to do?" Being Mzungu meant being under constant supervision in case I decided to pet a snake or cuddle a lion cub or something like that. Mzungu could not be left unattended except in their tent with a tour guide standing outside to make sure they didn't do something crazy like wake up early and go for a walk by themselves. I often wondered about my Maasai guard, who followed me everywhere, carrying this spear that to my eyes was basically a pointy stick. His job was to protect me from lions, and he was paid reasonably well for it. Reasonably well for a no-lion day, because I couldn't shake the feeling that if a lion did approach, his wages would no longer be sufficient for the task. I asked Celeste about this. "How do we know he wouldn't run away?" I said. Celeste looked at me like I had a cabbage for a head. "You were under his protection," he answered. "Yeah, but he doesn't know me or care about me, so why would he?" "He's Maasai," Celeste answered. "You're under his protection." There was a pause, and then Celeste repeated, "He's Maasai," as though this should explain it all. That night, my sleep was interrupted by what I can only describe as a moaning, growling kerfuffle of noises. I was nestled into the tent I'd mentioned earlier. It was a very nice tent, nicest you've ever been in, had a flush toilet. Was, though, still made of canvas. Thicker canvas than in Canada, sure, but not lion-level thick. Not even scissors-level thick. I tried to tell myself if I was in the tent, the lion would have no idea I was there. That required a lot of mental discipline to keep believing. And it wasn't just the lions that had arrived. Some other creature was out there, some new African creature I'd never heard before, making this terrified, mysterious, bleating, moaning sound. And there were the sounds of men, several men, yelling to each other in the local language. And I lay perfectly still, with the dark inside the canvas walls so absolute it felt like a washcloth covering my face, and I swallowed my terror. And in the morning, I learned that the mysterious new animal was, in fact, a cow. I've never heard cows being afraid. Turns out when cows are afraid for their lives, they don't say moo moo like in the old MacDonald song. Afraid cows don't sound like moo moo, much like humans afraid for their lives don't sound like, "Hi there, pleased to meet you." The cow had wandered away from the herd in a nearby village, and a team of Maasai men had tracked it, and they found it eventually, but they found it at the exact same moment that the lion found it, which was after dark, and we're talking like can't see your hand in front of your face kind of dark. The noises I heard were them stepping between the cow and the lion and shooing it away with their weapons, which I cannot emphasize this part enough, were basically machetes and pointy sticks, used largely without the benefit of sight. They won this battle. Lions are afraid of Maasai men, and it eventually retreated. Celeste says this is usually how it goes. Lions are afraid of the Maasai and will kill a Maasai warrior very rarely. He then immediately qualified kill a Mzungu on sight, though, every time, no reason at all, before I got any ideas. I was too hung up on this word rarely to absorb his lecture. Wait, I said, you said very rarely, like meaning not never? Meaning sometimes someone does die? Not often, said Celeste, which is not the same as never. I couldn't imagine risking my life like that, I said. Well, they're Maasai, Celeste answered, like it was a complete sentence. Then, a Maasai can't give up on his cow. Suddenly it all slid into place. It wasn't just about the one cow. Suddenly my Mzungu eyes could see the big picture. It's been explained to me that Maasai have survived for centuries through their reputation for bravery and self-sufficiency and honor. They have a reputation for never giving up, and the fact that everyone knows that is one of their greatest assets. The lions do not tangle with the Maasai. The neighboring Kikuyu tribe do not tangle with the Maasai. Even Mzungus didn't tangle with the Maasai, and the Mzungus tangled with everybody. In modern times, Mzungus are not adversaries in the same way. It's quite complicated. They are a threat still, but they're also tourists who bring lots of money, which they exchange for a chance to look at wild animals safely. And so the Maasai reputation is still a communal asset. The reason my guard would protect me at all costs was because if one Maasai lets one tourist die, everyone's reputation suffers. The whole region's economy gets put into jeopardy. Everyone's livelihood and independence was at stake. He'll protect me, I said, because I'm like a cow to him? Celeste nodded. A Maasai can't give up on his cow, because a Maasai can't give up on his reputation. Independence. His Maasai identity is how generations of his people have survived. My Mzungu eyes were improving. But I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach because I wasn't there as a tourist on safari. I wasn't there for the animals. I was there working on behalf of the Altumo Well Project. The Altumo Well Project began in my home community, raising money for a well in Celeste's village. Over time, the well had grown into a garden and a community center, and there was a budding relationship between the two communities. And I was here as a part of that relationship, to talk to the Maasai about some challenges to their way of life. In recent years, the Kenyan government had divided the land and deeded it to individual Maasai. So the Maasai couldn't move to chase the rainy season anymore. This was taking a toll on the livestock, half of which had died in the last year. Also, without the regular wars with the Kikuyu, the Maasai population was growing, and finite land can't sustain a large population on a livestock-based diet. Add to that the challenges of global warming, which were huge for the Maasai and hitting them really hard. And it was clear that the outside world was finally reaching the Maasai, and they needed help in adapting to it. It had sounded really simple back home in Saskatoon. As the saying goes, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. I was here to tell the Maasai that they needed new skills and guide them in their transformation. When the task was in front of me, though, it felt totally different. I was just one more white person arriving to tell the Maasai about how they needed to give up their cows and embrace the future. One more colonizer telling them that this time was different, just like every colonizer had told them before me. I was going to say this like I was some kind of expert, shadowed by a Maasai guard who had to follow me to keep me from trying to stick a green mamba in my mouth or some other idiotic thing. Here, Mzungus were just cash cows you had to keep from killing themselves long enough so they could get their little snaps for Instagram or whatever it was and go home again. Teach them to fish. What kind of arrogance was that? As we rode to the well site on the day of the big meeting, I felt a new feeling of unease in my stomach. I found myself thinking back to the advice of my friend Fulgence and hoping to find something to hold on to. Reverend Fulgence Ndadijimana reminded me so much of my friend Celeste, which is a little strange because they are from polar opposite backgrounds. Fulgence went to boarding school, had a degree, lived in the city, worked for not-profits in addition to running his church on the side. As I talked about in the story for all ages. He went on to found the Unitarian Church in Burundi, later a UU not-for-profit in Canada, so he grew up at the center of colonialism. Celeste grew up in one of the last pockets of successful resistance to it. Even though they were very different, the three of us met anyways for a meeting before my trip. Fulgence brought all kinds of experience in not-for-profits and community development, working with groups from many regions of Africa. And Salesh brought in-depth knowledge of the Maasai and all his relationships within the region. And I brought, well, I was the president of Ultumo at the time, and I knew a lot about committee structures, Robert's Rules, great with Robert's Rules. There are not many statements you can make about the entire continent of Africa that are true all over, but not a fan of Robert's Rules might be one of them. So I mostly listened. And the meeting that unfolded was nothing like I was used to. Fulgence asked question after question, detailed things about everything from how the Maasai chose whose hut was built where to the ratio of goats to cows. He frequently expressed admiration for the Maasai, whose spirit is admired all over Africa, but he mostly just listened. And at the end, when Salesh asked for advice, Fulgence said, "The Maasai have always solved their own problems. The most important thing is for the Maasai to continue to believe that they can solve their own problems. The most important thing is to listen and help as you are asked to help in only the ways that you are asked to help." I thought about this during the Jeep ride. I thought about this as the women filed in for our meeting, as I cooed at babies and sipped at tea and offered granola bars from my bag. I observed that every woman arriving put 10 shillings in the coffer, and it was 20 if you were late. I asked questions through my translator. I learned that husbands take the money if the women try to save up individually, so they have an investment club where they pool tiny amounts to buy one big thing, like a goat for one woman or school fees for another. They each take turns according to their need and their situation. It was easy to do, as Fulgence had said, to express admiration for the ingenuity and the perseverance of these women. It was hard, though, to bring the conversation around to the subject of cows. Especially because even with my Mzungu eyes, I could not escape the clear fact that I wasn't the person to teach these women to fish. I could see the big picture that the cow thing wasn't going to work, but I was coming face to face with my own incompetence in their world, and I had no illusions anymore that I had a better alternative to offer. An older woman took a breath to speak. The cows, she told me, aren't working. There are too many people, there's not enough land or water, the herds are dying. It's not going to work for very much longer to live this way. Of course they already knew. Of course. They were living in the middle of it. We try to sell things at the market, the woman continued, but we have to borrow what we sell, and that's very expensive as a way to run a store. We know how to make honey, and the resorts are willing to buy it from us, but it costs money to make it sanitary for tourists and to package it properly. We need you to talk to the white mothers and ask them to help us. Of course they had a plan. They didn't need me to teach them how to fish. These women already knew how to fish, they just didn't have the fishing rods. The amounts for each project that the women were planning were in the hundreds of dollars. I wrote down their stories, I took their pictures, and I ran the simplest and easiest crowdfunding campaign of my life. The white mothers were moved by the story. Money poured in. We took the money, we used it to fund projects as a microloan, but with a cool catch. When the loan got paid back, it didn't get paid back to us. It got paid back to the community, and the council would decide who would borrow the money the next time and what it would be spent on. In this way, it could transform the whole village. But it transformed me too. I come from a family that prizes education, and when I was a kid, I was taught that I was pretty smart. I grew up in the 80s. I was told to finish my food because there were starving children in Africa, and I absorbed this idea that the reason they were starving was because they didn't know what we in North America knew. They didn't make as good decisions as we could because they needed education. Throwing that line of thinking away was one of the best decisions I ever made. Understanding that people are experts in their own contexts, or at the very least that I am not an expert in their context, has transformed my ability to help. There are solutions that my Mzungu eyes can't see, and it's okay not to be the wise person in the room. Now when I offer my voice or my financial resources, I look for solutions that are led by the people who are facing the problem. I assume that they know better than I do what's needed. And I've seen firsthand over and over again how much farther resources stretch when you spend them in this way. I expected this transformation to be humbling, maybe even painful. I expected that coming to understand my limited expertise and giving up power would be hard, but it's been the opposite. It's been freeing. It's painful to try to act with wisdom you don't have, and it's a lot of work, and it feels broken, and it leads to all this cumbersome process. I find myself thinking back to that night when I showed Celeste the chart of our congregational structure, how he shook his head and then said, "You don't need all that to have community, you just put people together and community appears." I don't believe it's that simple. In most North American contexts, I think there are community building skills Celeste uses without even realizing he has them because he learned them as a child, things I didn't learn. One of those skills is a kind of power sharing partnership where each person finds the area that is theirs to be a steward of. This is better than the way I learned to do it. It creates better decisions and it leaves more time for relationships. I'm telling you this story today partly because I know you have your own decisions to make about how you use your power in the world, but also because I believe the support we provide overseas as Unitarian Universalists is crucial and that it's strongest when we are very aware of our Mzungu eyes. But the biggest reason is because I've used what I've learned from the Maasai over and over again in my life here. Being aware of what I can't see. Offering my opinion on decisions only after I've asked myself if I'm the wisest person to speak on the issue, what I have to offer. And putting relationships before process. Above all, leaving space for the connections that are not as simple as Celeste made them sound, but a lot simpler than I made them look with my chart. The best part of realizing what you don't know, I've found, is it allows space for you to learn and to form more honest connections, and to share power, and to keep processes down to only what is needed, leaving room to make a priority of human connection and a priority of building real community. My Mzungu eyes are improving.
Wow, I found that a very powerful message. I just have a couple of thoughts to share after that sermon. Um, so many years ago, when Ian and I went to Africa to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, we spent a bit of time in Ngorongoro crater. We were admiring this very large, look at those tusks, bull elephant walking along. And one of the members of our group was an avid photographer. He got out of the Jeep and stood out, filming and filming as the elephant approached. And our guide, who might have been a Maasai, said, "Greg, it's time to go." I can't really claim to have much knowledge about elephants, but I am African. And I know when they start walking towards you and they pick up their pace and their ears are flapping, it's time to grow. So I used to have a video clip of this and I couldn't find it. I just found these two still photos. But in the video clip, you can hear me saying, "Greg, get back in the Jeep. Greg, get back in the Jeep. Greg, get back in the Jeep." And finally, Greg got back in the Jeep and we took off before the elephant decided to charge. We also did have a visit to a Maasai village, and I was struck there by the wisdom of the Maasai, because the gentleman who was showing us his house showed us the one house. This is where he lived with his first wife. And then he showed us another house. And this is where he lived with his second wife. And we all agreed he was very wise, having two houses, one per wife. So this month, we are sharing our half plate donations for with the Ulster Immigrant Defense League. And there are ways to donate online. It's probably easiest if you just go to the website, ucatskills.org/donate. And I put this picture in, there's Father Frank. Father Frank Alanya. He's the president of the UIDN. And I've met Father Frank a few times here in Rhinecliff and also in Costa Rica. And he is such a wonderful man. And I know Reverend Bob has alluded to him, and I just wanted to um, give him credit today for all the work he's done in the local community. So the offertory song is When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Another one to keep in your head this week.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, yeah, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. Then our heart is in a holy place. Then our heart is in a holy place.
So for the closing words, I'd just like to read a little bit about Flaming Chalice International. It was born following the 2015 political unrest in Burundi. And so I just included a couple of pictures from the website. And these are people that the organization helps. This is Mboninuyibuka Florian. And here we have Goreth's family. They live in the Mahama refugee camp. So their family is supported with food and medical needs. So that makes a big difference to their life. And we can support Flaming Chalice International by going online and making a donation. This is the closing hymn that came with the service. And this is on the website. There are more waters rising. Somehow, having crossed waters and fires and rebuilt mountains, these words no longer feel like a cry of despair. Instead, they are a call for resistance and resilience, an affirmation of what is possible when communities and country come together in support of human decency.
Hi, this is Reverend Joanna Lubkin coming to you from Boston, Massachusetts, with a song called There Are More Waters Rising by Sarah Lynch Thomason. Let's learn it. I'll sing a line and invite you to sing it back at home. It goes like this. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Let's do that. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Good. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to us. Let's do that. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to us. Good. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Just like the beginning. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Good. The song repeats a bunch. You'll catch on. Add harmonies, add some body percussion, tapping, snapping along. Okay, so let's sing. There are more. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to us. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. More fires burning. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more fires burning, they will find their way to us. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. More people hungry. There are more people hungry, this I know, this I know. There are more people hungry, this I know. There are more people hungry, I will find my way to them. There are more people hungry, this I know, this I know. There are more people hungry, this I know. But you know what? We will wade through the waters. We will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know. We will wade through the waters when they find their way to us. We will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know. We will walk through the fires. We will walk through the fires, this I know, this I know. We will walk through the fires, this I know. We will walk through the fires when they find their way to us. We will walk through the fires, this I know, this I know. We will walk through the fires, this I know. We will break bread together. We will break bread together, this I know, this I know. We will break bread together, this I know. We will break bread together, feeding every type of hunger. We will break bread together, this I know, this I know. We will break bread together, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know. Just that end again. We will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know. One more time. We will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know.
Please share with me extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And Catherine will now lead us in singing the sung benediction.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.